Good morning, friends. It is good to be here this morning with you all. Thanks for being with us here at Journey Home Meditation for our morning sit today. I am happy to be here. All right. It is a very strange thing that I'm finding. Let me have some of this tea first. We want to get started right? Okay, so let's go back a second. There's been a lot of it's not a surprise if I were to say that there's been a lot of violence in our consciousness and in our world, in our communities. And it seems, for whatever reason, whether it's we have more focus upon it or than we have in the past, or whether it's actually increasing, that it's happening more and more. And there are all of these levels of defenses that I find coming up inside of myself when I hear of these violent acts, because there's a part of me that wants to live. Obviously, there's a part of me that wants to feel safe and wants the people in my life to feel safe and wants the people of the world to feel safe. And when we have these repeated acts of violence around us, it increases our unclear tensions. It just creates a low level of anxiety that's just kind of ever present. Part of this is definitely grief. And part of it is a way that our body is protecting itself, protecting us, protecting ourselves, without us having to consciously think about protecting ourselves. And this, if you talk to evolutionary biologists, they'll say that this is a function to free up our conscious aware energy for our brains to think in the moment of what's happening. So we have this unconscious response that the body begins to uh, build inflammation and all of these things to protect us. And that's what the tension is. The tension is our body actually sending cortisol into the body to inflame and protect the body. Right. Here's the thing is that when we don't know that we're carrying this level of tension all the time, we become unaware that we are living in a somewhat hyper-aware state, right? We become unaware that I am now unconsciously on guard and defending myself in any given moment. And this, I think, is responsible for a lot of our experiences of dissociation from the ability to be sensitive to the smaller things, the smaller sensations. I think that for myself, when I am in a inflamed protective state, I am less cognizant of the subtleties of uh, kindness and sensitive to affection. All of these little signals that we get and send to each other, these energetic um, sharings that we have, sometimes on an unspoken level, sometimes even an outright expression of affection towards us, we can become desensitized to or less aware of. Um, because a lot of these sensations and feelings and experiences are really finding their home when we are in a state of calm, a state of peace and relaxation. It's called rest and digest. Um, this is where we find our ability to nourish ourselves. It's almost, if you look at it like a garden, this is when we're getting the compost, the fertilizing, all of these elements that help us to blossom in a larger way. When we are on the defensive and protective, we are closed. We're a lot more of us is closed, energetically closed, spiritually closed. We are not as able, not just willing, but not as able to enter into gentle, kind, and caring conversations with people. We don't have as much capacity to listen to someone who is struggling, share their story, because we are in small ways looking out for what the potential threat may be in any moment. And this, again, is not conscious. This isn't necessarily an expression of paranoia, but on a sub level, just underneath the surface, this is what's happening in our body and in the back of our psyche, right? This is an unconscious driver because of the sheer amount of exposure that we have to the knowledge of these violent acts that are happening all around. And this can create a level of isolation in and of itself. We can begin to, for our own safety, stray away from strangers, from people who may come from different cultural backgrounds, people who may come from different financial class situations, people who may come from different groups that we are either unaware of or that we are suspicious of, not even in our frontal lobe thought processes, but because of our enculturation and trainings by media and by the cultures that we currently reside in. Then this we are less open. We are less open when we are feeling threatened, and this is true on every level, right? Whether it's an interpersonal relationship, when I feel that I may be being criticized or attacked in a way that feels harmful by a lover, a friend, a family member, whatever it is, I'm less open to hearing their perspective. I start to close. When I feel threatened or um, potentially disenfranchised, economically, I become closed. I'm very careful with, where I spend my money, what's going, it goes on and on. There's multiple layers to this where this truth lives on multiple planes. When we feel threatened, we have a difficult time accepting and being open and sharing in space. It's just comes down to that. And this is a tension. This is tension that's underlying everything. And we become so ingratiated to it. We become so um, enraptured by this way of being that we think that this is normal, and it becomes such a normal feeling we don't even know there's tension there. We don't even know. And so the practice this morning that I was having in my own body um, was one of trying to really explore where I'm holding tension in my body. And this wasn't even to be allegorical or a metaphor for the tension I'm holding emotionally or spiritually. This was literally it's just a practice of physical tension so that I can find relaxation in my body, and that will help me to lower my inflammation, and I can move my joints a little easier. This is a something I do each morning is try to figure out a way to move without pain. And sometimes it feels like I'm pushing that boulder uphill, but the practice this morning really did strike a chord with me in this sense, and I can relate it to a social interaction that I had yesterday. But the practice is this: it's simply to introduce intentional tension to a part of your body, stressing it intentionally so that when you release intentionally, you get a more full release. When we strain a muscle with intention and we really put everything into it and then we release, there's a larger release there than if we just say, I'm going to relax that foot and then and then go. Because if I'm unaware that I'm holding tension in my feet, I'm going to think that I'm relaxed when I'm not. But if I can really go there and create tension and then release that tension, you'll find as you move through the body, you are finding a deeper level of relaxation than was there before. And there's a few things happening on a physiological level that make this true, uh, with hormones and um, different things that the body creates to aid us in protection and flow. Um, but I found it to be true that any part of my body, if I bring intentional tension to that part of my body for a moment of time, and then intentionally release that tension, I find a deeper relaxation than if I just try to relax that part of my body. And it's a practice that we do. We do this in different forms of meditation, nidra yoga. This is something that oftentimes somebody who is leading you through a nidra yoga practice will walk you through each part of your body doing exactly this. And now to connect that to something on a social plane, right? So there's all these planes of existence. There's what's happening in my bones. There's what's happening in my DNA. There's what's happening in my body as a whole, and there's what's happening in the social body, and onward and onward. I think that I don't want to beat that horse, but we understand where I'm going with that. Um, I was at the fitness center yesterday that I teach meditation at, and I was sitting in the sauna at the end of the evening, and there was four um, men in the sauna, and nobody was speaking, and I sat for about 10 minutes or so in this silent space, and nobody was interacting with each other, and that's okay. We don't always have to entertain one another or interact, and sometimes we are just looking for that quiet space, but something felt like maybe there was an underlying tension. Now, not necessarily an aggravated tension. I didn't feel an aggression or anything of that nature, but it just felt like maybe there was an urge to connect with one another, and we didn't have the tools, the social tools to do that. And so I introduced tension into the room by saying hello to everyone and posing a question. Again, when I say tension, I don't mean that I introduced negativity into the room or anything like that. It was more of um, an invitation to share that space with one another in what was possibly an uncomfortable thing, and to be able to make that more accessible. Right, just like we do with our body, we bring tension to a part of our body so that when we relax, it makes that part of our body a little more accessible to us. And so I say hello and we start talking, and what ends up coming up in the conversation is all of the violence that's happening in our world. There's been a lot of shootings in our area lately. There were more shootings yesterday in Medford when I was there, and a couple days prior to that, there was more. And a couple weeks ago, of course, there were some here, and it just keeps coming up. And I said, it's just interesting how many of us walk around feeling isolated or lonely, and yet we don't do the one thing that we can do to sort of uh, shift that feeling, and that's to connect with each other. So I was expressing gratitude for the men in that sauna for being willing to connect, and we started talking about that. We began to discuss how many people walk through our day without connecting to another human being. We have these superficial business relationships with each other. The hi, how are you? I'm fine. How are you? Would you like a bag with this? No, thank you. Have a good day. You too. These conversations, but on a deeper level of really touching in and looking into each other's eyes and spending that moment with the more subtle interactions that I was talking about, that we tend to not be aware of or ignore or not be willing to touch into when we are living with a low level of tension. Um, but in disarming that tension, coming together, we can go to those deeper places and talking to each other. And especially in our culture with men, it's something that a lot of men don't have time or space allotted to share deeper feelings, especially when those feelings are feelings of fear or feelings of loneliness, feelings of disconnection, feelings of worry. And I think that it's probably true for any human being, any body. But coming from my perspective of the training I know I've received to be a man, it it's clear to me that we are taught to not reach out and not connect on those levels. Those aren't considered um, tough enough or whatever it is. And so we were connecting on that level, and then the conversation went back to the shootings, and I said, it's how many of these violent acts are by people who just don't know that they are seen, cared about, or loved in any day. And maybe in these moments where we interact in this way, in a kind and compassionate and curious way with one another, you don't know who's in that sauna with you. You don't know who's in that locker room or who's in that waiting room at the doctor's office or who's sitting alone when we're grabbing a quick lunch. We don't know what they're going through, what they're experiencing, and we don't know what could be the thing that shifts the course away from violence into just being okay that day, just being okay. And it's really gotten me thinking that to not be somebody who is going to shoot people is not enough. In a world where there is this level of violence taking place all around us, racial violence, class violence, gender violence, all of these different levels of violence and aggression that are taking place, it's not enough to not be the one who is committing those acts of violence. Because that's not participating on a level of love. and it's not being of service. And for me, I really value being of service. So for me, what's required is to reach out and connect with people. It's not always striking up conversations in saunas or any of that does this, but just finding that I don't want to withdraw. Even when I'm scared or I have that low level of tension in my body, moving through that in a way that I can make eye contact with somebody and have a deeper conversation and really say thank you when I'm saying thank you. I don't know that that's changing the world, but it does change my body. It does change my experience. And if that's true, then it might be changing the other person that I'm speaking with. It might be changing the level of tension in their body and releasing some of that and allowing them to feel subtle experiences of love. And I think that that's being of service to one another when we can help one another to feel loved. That's what service is. And some people from different religions understand that to be of service to God is to be of service to other people. When I am serving another, I am serving the higher purpose of God, the higher purpose of love, the higher purpose of connectivity, understanding. And so it is through kindness to others. It is through feeding others. It is through holding the hand of someone as they weep. It is through asking with sincerity how someone's day is and being there to hear a full answer. It is in offering honesty and vulnerability that I am serving love. And I think that it's not enough to just withdraw from violence. We have to get in the way. We have to get in the way because if one part of my body is harming another part of my body, I have to make a conscious effort to stop that. I have to make this conscious effort. And I think that if I'm honest, that's how it feels when I think about children buried in the rubble in Gaza. That's how it feels when I think about parents getting phone calls from the latest mass shooting. And that's how it feels when I read a post about a dear friend that I haven't spoken to in many years dying on the streets somewhere. Um, it feels like there's a part of my body that's hurting, and I want to give it that love and attention and focus. And so the practice is to bring tension into that part of the body with my focus and my awareness and my consciousness, and then to release the tension with relaxation, calm, and loving kindness. So let's have a bit of practice together. And if there's anybody that has anything to speak to on that, please let me know. There's comments that you can, wherever you're listening to this right now, you can comment. You can comment live. You can comment after if you're listening to the recording, and you can send me a message at journeyhomemeditation@gmail.com. But I would love to increase the capacity for this discussion. I would love to have more and deeper understandings of how each of us experience low levels of tension, how we each experience our grief, how we each experience our fears and our vulnerabilities and our abilities to be of service to love. I want to have these conversations more because it did help me. It helped me to relax into my body and to feel a bit more connected to just a few guys in a sauna. And that was what I needed. So reach out. But in the meantime, I think I'd like to find my meditation posture. Our meditation posture is simply that place within our bodies of balance, and if you'd like, you can move your awareness through your body and bring tension, squeezing the toes down, bringing tension to the feet, breathing in, into the nose, to the bottom of the belly, and then when you release the breath, release the tension. Find the deeper relaxation in the feet. Come to your calves, your shins. Tighten your calves and your shins as you breathe in. And as you release the breath, release the tension. Continue to the knees and thighs. And release. If you're seated with your feet flat to the floor or on the ground on a pillow or rug with your legs crossed in any number of positions, just make sure that you're not putting any harmful pressure onto your feet, ankles, or knees. Straightening your back as best as you can. I find that sitting on a small pillow under my bum is really helpful to my posture, being able to straighten my back without stress or strain. If you're standing or walking, you can do this tension practice as well. You may want to just pause for a moment. Really give yourself a moment to feel your body. Bring your awareness now to your groin and your bum. Bring tension as you breathe in and release. Move up to the lower belly, lower back. Bring the tension, breathe in and release. Bring it to the center of the belly, the middle of the back. Bring tension. Breathing in and release. Tighten your chest, your upper back, bringing tension as you breathe in and relaxation as you release. Clenching fists with your fingers, tighten your hands, your wrists, your forearms, your upper arms. Bring all of that tension as you breathe in and relaxation as you release. Bring your shoulders up to your ears, tense your shoulders and your neck. And as you breathe out, relax. Bring the back of your shoulders all the way together, stretching your arms back as you tighten your back. Breathing in and release. Really crunch your face up, bring a lot of tension into your cheeks, your jaw. Breathe in. And release. Now just spend a moment being with this feeling in the body. Breathing in gently through the nose. Breathing out just a little bit longer than you breathed in. Slow and calm. A few more breaths. And this is a practice you can do multiple times. Whatever you need to do to become consciously aware of the tension that you were carrying unconsciously, and then to release that tension. I find that sometimes, with my wife or with my kids or with my friends, sometimes we just start bickering with each other, and then it turns into an argument. And then we recognize, like, oh, there was tension that I had with you that I didn't even give awareness to. I wasn't thinking about that tension, but obviously it was there because now we're in this full-blown argument and we're getting through some deeper stuff, right? Like the argument starts with the pretext, the little thing that triggered us into the argument, but then there's the deeper things that start to come out and we get to process those things together. Sometimes it's messy. Sometimes it's real messy. But oftentimes, hopefully, it ends in a deeper understanding and a deeper kindness and love for one another, because there was something that we needed to work through. Now, if I had my druthers, as they say, it would be to consciously process those things with one another regularly. Just sit and find a way to release those tensions and process those feelings with kindness and understanding without having to feel like it's a battle. Even when it's messy or difficult, sometimes it's an invitation to something really beautiful, and we don't have to make it struggle. We only struggle with it when we are unaware that it's there or we reject that it exists. If we insist upon resistance, then we're going to feel that tension. So learning this practice in my own body doing this practice every day helps me to become more fluid and rehearsed with this practice. Now I've spent a lifetime being rehearsed with repression. I've spent a lifetime being rehearsed with shame and blame and guilt. I've done all of that for long enough that it feels like it's my nature, but it's not. It's what we've practiced. That's why we've learned it. These are skills all around. What we practice is what we begin to do without thought. So coming together this way, this intentional practice of just taking a few breaths and working through our body, this is teaching us a way of being that invites kindness, invites gentleness, invites the softer, more subtle feelings to come forward, and allows us to process these things in a loving and caring way. And that's what I like. That's what I want. And I'm so grateful to each person that joins me on this journey, whether it's through Journey Home or your own practices, whatever it is. I'm so grateful for all of us that are taking the time to become softer, to become more gentle, and learning how to get in the way when there is a level of violence that we are encountering. So thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hariom.